Welcome back to the Kang Gang Pod. Today we are recording right after the Sacramento Kings had a huge bounce back performance. After a terrible, heartbreaking loss to the Washington Wizards, we fought back and we beat the Charlotte Hornets 125 to 102. It was a massive win, especially coming off of a terrible loss to the Washington Wizards. But today we have an extremely special guest. We have a cornerstone of the Sacramento sports broadcast scene. You may have heard his voice alongside the high flyer on Sactown Sports 1140 or his play-by-play announcing for UC Davis basketball and football. He's been covering the Sacramento Kings since 2002. Please welcome in the Kang Gang Pod studio, Mr. Scott Marsh, everyone.
Woo! Thanks for having me here, guys. This is cool. I am absolutely blown away with your setup here. Just seeing this King's Cave that you've put together with all the bobbleheads, whether they're 6 inches or 3 feet tall, the jerseys, all the posters, everything really from the last 40 years. This is awesome, guys.
Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for enjoying this beautiful studio that we've created.
I could see how much time it took to put this thing together, man.
Oh my gosh, it's been a lifelong project. It's just been a lot of time sitting in the garage, and now finally we've had a place to use it. So thank you again for coming on. Scott Marsh is celebrating a birthday very soon on April 6th, so happy early birthday.
Thank you. I've got something in common with your mom,
That's
Ryan,
right.
of course.
That's right.
Lisa. We're 4 Sixers. So
That's right.
We're looking forward to a big birthday weekend.
There you go. And so those that don't know, my mom and Scott Marsh worked in the radio business for many years. And, we're very fortunate to have that connection with Scott, and very happy to have you on. We worked out a date and we made it happen. So
we made it happen. And you're lucky you have a wonderful mom. And I know how proud she is of you with everything you do, from your musical talent to now being a sports broadcaster. So it's just great to be a part of it.
Shouts out to Lisa. Lisa is amazing.
She's
one of the greatest out there.
She is. We went to Ruth Chris. Last night.
Nice.
Had a nice little steak, filet, Cabernet Sauvignon. It was.
Oh my
gosh. It was good. They have a good deal. It's like $45 for a filet and Cabernet. Can't beat it.
I think that's your next sponsor for the show, right?
Maybe.
Hey,
gosh, that would be huge.
Make it happen.
That'd be huge if Ruth Chris was like that.
That would be amazing. But today I wanted to talk about the past, the present, and the future. Since you've been a part of this organization, you've seen the highest of highs and beyond the depths of rock bottom.
Yes.
So let's start with what's currently going on with this team. We stand at 37-40. Going into the season, we had some high expectations for this season, and I was just curious what your expectations were, and like how do you think the season has been going so far, and like how do you think it got to this point?
Wow, that's an open-ended question. I mean, Wednesday, first of all, was one of the lows in Washington, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But this year, obviously, high expectations. 2 years ago with Mike Brown in his first year to make the playoffs, to be a 3 seed, to take the Warriors to 7 games. And if it wasn't for Steph Curry with one of the greatest playoff performances in NBA history, we probably would have moved on. And I'd still say even if De'Aaron Fox had been hurt in that series, we may have moved on. And then you fast forward a year later to get beat by New Orleans 6 times in 1 year, to really only get in the play. And you beat the Warriors, so that was the positive, to beat them in a play-in game. But to not get into the playoffs was a step back. And then this year, getting DeMar DeRozan, you're thinking, okay, we're back on a playoff trajectory. Things are looking good. And then we kind of know what happened. The Kings went on that horrible losing streak. I mean, it really started bad. They lost every preseason game, which normally means absolutely nothing. And I was thinking, boy, that means nothing at all. But then they got off to a slow start. Then they lost 5 straight games at home. They lost to the Lakers twice. They were tied to Indiana at halftime and ended up losing by 27. And then they lose on a 4-point play by Jaden Ivey after the notorious De'Aaron Fox foul. And then that infamous press conference afterwards where Mike Brown kind of called out De'Aaron. De'Aaron kind of shuffled it off. People assumed that maybe De'Aaron was upset with Mike Brown. Then Mike Brown gets let go. And then we know what happens with De'Aaron getting traded. So that's my long-winded way of saying, boy, there's been a lot going on this year. It hasn't gone the way that we certainly wanted it to as Kings fans, and now kind of fighting for the play-in. And really, right now, we're in the play-in because Phoenix has been so bad too. Dallas is so banged up right now. But there's still a chance to get a 9 seed, get in the play-in, win the first play-in game. You never know what's going to happen with that second play-in game. Memphis right now is really not playing well. They've been kind of in tank mode. They won an important game last night at the buzzer with Ja. But, I mean, if you're being best-case scenario here, you could get into the play-in, hopefully host a game, win that, go on the road. Maybe it's Memphis. You steal a game there, and you're in the playoffs at least. And that might be the best-case scenario, that you're matched up with Oklahoma City in the first-round playoff game. But is it what we thought it would be at the beginning of the year or what we were hoping for? No, it's not.
That's exactly what we were talking about on the last episode.
I'm sorry I took so long.
No,
that's a great question.
That gave me just flashbacks of every single moment that happened this season. And yeah, but we were just talking about how we think, best situation would be if we could host the game because, Golden One Center would bring that playoff-like atmosphere like we always do.
And I think it would. It'd be interesting. Obviously, last year we had the Warriors, and that was the great carrot for the play-in because everybody wanted revenge after losing in the playoffs. Hopefully the fan base it would still be up for the play-in. I think it would. Obviously, there's a lot of fans who are dismayed at what's going on right now. And, it's hard not to be. The loss in Washington was really kind of mind-numbing. They did reverse it tonight against Charlotte. They did exactly tonight what they needed to do on Wednesday. Hopefully that turns a corner. And to your point, hopefully the Kings fan base would be ready for a play-in game. But right now, I'm not as convinced that they are the way things have gone.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of different, opinions about this team, especially right now. A lot of fans have been checked out. A lot of fans are still there. But I've noticed just Golden One Center still finds a way to fill out. Sure. So that I think the fans that we see online versus the fans that we see in person, it's a lot different.
It's very different. And I think another thing that's also important too, you've looked at home games in a play-in situation. That's revenue. Right?
Sure.
And
it's important to the team.
It's important to the team. It's important to the ownership. It's important to the front office. So when you're able to have an opportunity to host a play-in game, people are going to tune in. That's going to be good for revenue. Yes. People are going to fill in seats. And based off that too, because again, you talk about Dallas being banged up. AD is out for tonight against the Clippers. So assuming that the Clippers win, we would be a half a game out.
And we have the tiebreaker against Dallas. So that's big.
Correct. And that's huge as well because Dallas' schedule is also not easy at all.
It's probably a little easier than ours if we're being honest about it because right now with the Charlotte game over, I mean, if you look at our remaining 5 games, minus Phoenix, the last game of the year, we're probably not favored in any of the 4 leading up to it.
Nope, not at all. And it wouldn't be surprising, too, because there's other teams that could be resting guys as well. So we could be catching Cleveland resting their players. We could catch Denver. We can catch the Clippers resting. It all depends on what the West is going to really stockpile, too. So we'll see. It's going to really... These last 5 games are going to really dictate whether or not we get to host a play-in game at this point. I'm kind of more on leaning on the side of we will, just based off our schedule and just how we have that tiebreaker over Dallas. So I'm kind of thinking this will be most likely our situation.
And that would be great. And, the thing with Dallas, and I was really caught off guard that AD's not playing because he had such a great game on Wednesday night, had the game winner, looked motivated. I mean, it was a great win for them against Atlanta. Klay Thompson hits a 3 to tie it. Then AD hits a runner going reverse to the basket to win it. Great defense on Trey at the end to prevent him from getting a 3-pointer. But now if he's out, who knows? They do have Gafford back. They do have Lively back, but of course no Kyrie. So,
yeah, Dallas, their story is a lot worse than ours. I will say that. But yeah, I think with the games that we have coming up, it's very possible for us to sneak up because right now, if Dallas does lose, we'll be a half game back. And now Phoenix did lose today, so we're 2 games ahead of them. So that's a nice or safer cushion. So next we have a back-to-back with Cleveland and Detroit. So 2 teams, obviously, that are at the top of the East. Detroit has had a remarkable year. They tripled their win total, and they're a tough team. And Kings do not play good against tough teams typically. But before that, we have Cleveland, who, in some miracle world of the Sacramento Kings season, we find a way to beat them.
Yeah,
but
they were in the midst of a 4-game losing stretch too. Not to discount that win because it was a great win, but Cleveland was struggling at that point too.
Yeah. We caught them at a good time, but
Yeah.
we also were missing Sabonis in that game, and I believe
True.
was it Levine too? We were missing 2 stars that game, but
I have to go back.
It was
and look at
either
that box
Monk.
score.
It was either Monk or Levine. So it was one of those
yeah,
two.
but for somehow, I mean, we ended up winning, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
not going to. I don't think it's going to be the same story going into this Cleveland game because they want to secure that number 1 spot. They have a 5-game cushion over Boston,
And they're going to get that. I
Yeah.
mean, for them not to get that seems almost impossible right now. Not that they're going to let up, but I can't imagine a scenario where Boston catches them.
Yeah, there's no way.
No way.
But if they do need to, lay off the gas a little bit and decide to rest a few players, I mean, we're all for it. We'll take anyone we can.
But here's the thing. We've seen other teams rest lots of players and it hasn't seemed to matter. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a good thing, but there's no guarantee, of course.
You got to be careful though, because Imani Bates could be coming out of the woodworks and just drop 30 against us. So that's,
I mean, we've seen Ty Jerome do it.
Yeah.
I mean, Ty Jerome could drop 30 on us.
JT Thor hit the game winner, and he was coming from the G League. So anybody, any given night, that's you got to be ready.
Yeah,
you give anybody confidence, and there's a reason they're in the NBA, right?
Exactly. Even the guys that are in the G League. I mean, we saw Mason Jones the other night score 47 points. So I mean,
How about the Stockton Kings, right? Number
Yep.
1 seed. They've got a
Western
home game
Conference
tomorrow
Finals.
night.
Oh,
Pretty cool.
we love
Western
it.
Conference
We love
Finals.
it.
Yeah, we're big fans. Isaiah Crawford was
Yeah.
playing really well. Scalabissiere.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
a monster double-double.
All monster. So yeah, I mean
Terry Taylor.
Yeah, Terry Taylor, another guy too. So you just build that team is just very, very fun to watch right now too. So even after giving up Drew Timmy, they still made the
How
Western
about
Conference
him
Finals.
signing a 2-year contract? That's pretty impressive.
That's very impressive. Yeah, for a team like Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
Jordy Fernandez.
They play hard.
They do.
They haven't
really
won
do.
a lot of games, but they play hard.
And Jordy is a really good coach. So, giving him like a very high level pick in next year's draft, he's going to come in. Jordy Fernandez is really going to be that team that could really help them get into that play-in conversor next year.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I really like what Brooklyn's doing. I mean, when we saw them earlier this year, I had them winning the East play-in, or the East in-season tournament. I was very high on them just based off the way they played against us. I was like, they could beat anyone. But
Well, we were trying to take their players for a while there, too. Any guy named Cam, so...
Oh, man, it's crazy just having a little snapshot of what the season has looked like. So, yeah, I just kind of stemming all that back. It's just been a very interesting season. So, anyways, kind of just moving a little bit further now. Where do you see this team go for the next 5 games? What is your projection for this for the rest of the season? Where do you think this will land up for the Kings?
It's been a roller coaster. So, my Scott Marsh crystal ball is pretty clouded right now. I don't know what to expect. I mean, I'm happy again tonight that they took care of business, because if they'd lost tonight, I would have said maybe all bets are off, that they maybe don't win another game this year. You can't lose to Washington and Charlotte and expect that you're going to win another game. So hopefully this gives them some momentum. Certainly they're not favored in Cleveland or Detroit. They come home Wednesday against Denver. They've got to maybe get one of those two against Denver or the Clippers. And then Sunday against the Suns, the way that game works out, if it's one game either way between Phoenix or Sacramento, that game's going to determine that seed, because whoever wins that game would have the tiebreakers. Because if Phoenix wins, it would be a split on the season series, 2 games each. The next tiebreaker is the division record, which Phoenix owns right now. Phoenix amazingly has a really good division record right now. The Kings are 4-10 against division teams, and Phoenix is 9-5, I want to say. So,
which is really surprising,
It is. Consider, you're talking about the Warriors and the Lakers and the Kings. So
I didn't realize that's what it goes down to. If it's a split series, they do the division. I didn't realize that, but
yeah, it goes division first in conference record, and it's unfortunate it's not conference first, because the Kings actually have a better conference record than Phoenix does.
That would have been great. Yeah, I truly think it's going to come down to that last game.
It certainly could. It certainly could, and if it does, then all bets are off. I would like to say I favor Sacramento over Phoenix in that scenario, and let's face it, Phoenix has probably been a worse scenario than us, and we haven't been great here of late for sure, but Phoenix has probably been playing worse, and who knows if they'll have Durant, right? It was a week. We're coming up on that week timetable now. Would Kevin Durant come back for that game? If so, that changes things, of course. hopefully we're past that situation. If the Kings could find a way to get one, if they get 2 more wins before that final game, I think they're safe. 1 game, possibly. Phoenix's schedule is not easy either. Losing tonight in Boston, they go to New York. On Sunday, they host Golden State at home. They have OKC at home. Their easiest game, they go to San Antonio before coming to Sacramento. So, I mean, if you look at their schedule, they're going to be favored probably in none of those games, honestly. But the most winnable game would be San Antonio.
And although San Antonio is missing De'Aaron Fox and Wembanyama,
they're playing well.
Tonight, they just pushed Cleveland to a 1-point game.
Yeah,
so,
they're playing well.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, San Antonio is a very well-run organization, top to bottom. But like you were saying earlier, this season has been a complete roller coaster.
Yeah,
and yesterday, Sam Amick reported on Sactown Sports that DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis are going to have tough conversations with the front office this offseason. Mm-hmm. So my question to you is, how do you anticipate those conversations going with, DeMar and Domantas Sabonis' representation? Like, what do you think the outcome would be?
I mean, first of all, Sam is the best. Sam Amick covers the league like no other. But I think that's kind of obvious, right? I mean, DeMar DeRozan is in his 16th year. He wants to win a championship. He came here to win. He came here in part because De'Aaron Fox was here. De'Aaron Fox kind of courted him, took him out to dinner, was here for the Summer League game when they introduced him. So there's no doubt that DeMar is going to ask the team, what's the direction here? And if the direction isn't to win soon, then he probably will want to move on. And if you're the Kings and now you have Zach LaVine, I mean, you have to be thinking, okay, you have DeMar, you have Zach. They both played together in Chicago. The Bulls didn't threaten with that combination. So is it realistic to think that this can be a great team with those two here? That's part of what has got to be going on, right? And LaVine, you're not moving him. He's got another 2 years at over $40 million. That would be a very tough contract if you wanted to try and move. And you traded for him. Mm-hmm. So I don't see that happening. And for Sabonis, he just signed the long max extension. And he's probably going to be all NBA again this year, right? So
that's the hope.
He just qualified. I think he just made it for his 65 games to be eligible for all NBA. And it's a shame that he can't be an all-star, but he can be all NBA, but that's a different story.
He's definitely getting
He will be there.
Yeah.
We keep saying that, but
you never know. Sometimes
I agree with you. It's just, if he can't make an all-star team these last 2 years, like when is he going to make it in this Western Conference, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But of course he's going to have the conversation too, because he wants to win and they move the best player on the team. So he's got to be asking about direction a little bit too. I mean, I think in Sabonis' case, and it's not like I've spoken to him personally, so this is just kind of my outside understanding. Him and Doug are tight. Doug's the one who works him out in the off season, so they spent a lot of time together. So he's probably waiting to see what's going to happen with the coaching situation, right? Is Doug coming back? Are they bringing somebody else in? That's going to be a fundamental question, right? There's some thoughts, is Monty McNair coming back? So there's a lot of front office coaching questions that obviously DeMar, Sabonis, everybody on this team's thinking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, we know that there was a divide in the locker room with Mike Brown as the coach. That was revealed by Sam Amick as well. But do you think there's a divide with Doug Christie as the head coach? And do you think, because obviously we all know that Domantas Sabonis and Doug, like, that's his guy. Like, he wants Doug to be the coach, but just because Domantas wants him to be the coach, does everyone else view him?
Well, the one thing I've always learned about being in this, business and being a part of things for such a long time, there's still so many things that go on behind the scenes you just don't know about. And like people like Sam are much more engaged in that than I am. So I'm not the right person to ask about like what player thinks this about Doug or doesn't think about it. I mean, I just kind of look at it from a big picture. I think you saw the team rally around Doug after the Mike Brown got let go and they went on that nice win streak. And obviously they've struggled of late. Doug to me seems to be a player's coach. So I would find it hard for people not to feel like they want to play for Doug. I do think Sabonis is a big Doug fan, but we'll see. Because at the end of the day, players got to do what's best for them too, right? And they're trying to figure out their own personal situation here and how that fits in to everything else going on as well. So there's a lot on the table for the Kings right now in this offseason, right? I mean, there's a lot going on in these remaining games first, but there's a lot going on once this season's over.
I think it also really depends on how the season really goes, because let's say we do win those 2 play-in games and we are able to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And we are competitive with OKC. A lot of people think we would sweep, but let's say best case scenario, we push them to like 5 or 6 games.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I think the conversations will most likely be a little bit different.
Totally. I mean, in that scenario, I would find it almost impossible that Doug's not coming back. Not that couldn't happen. I mean, there's going to be qualified coaches available. There always is. I mean, Taylor Jenkins' name is now being thrown around everywhere, right? But you've got to consider, too, Memphis fired him, right? So what was going on there? They didn't allow him to bring his assistant coaches back this year. They had got on a losing streak. Was he using John Morant the right way? So you could say the same thing about any coach. I mean, coaches always feel better from the outside, right? Looking in versus when you have the coach. So I don't know about that. But I do think, to your point, if we, the Kings, were able to get into a first-round playoff series and they showed any signs of life against the best team in the league, how could you not bring Doug back in that scenario? And I think they want to bring Doug back. I don't feel like this organization would have made the move with Mike Brown, put Doug Christie in as head coach if they weren't hoping this was more than just a temporary solution. I know it's an interim coach situation, but I do feel like they want Doug to be the guy next year. I do feel that.
That's what I'm hoping too. I'd love to see Doug in a full season with the full training camp and his own staff. I'd like to see how that would play out. So that's where I'm leaning towards. But back on the Domantas Sabonis situation, I mean, he is turning 29 very soon. You know, he's still, I mean, he is in his prime.
Oh, for sure.
With 3 seasons left on his very expensive contract. With a playoff berth, I think that could be enough to keep for him to want to stay. But my question is, do you think there's enough pieces around Domantas Sabonis for him to actually want to be here?
At the moment, I think it's a question mark, right? You know, and by the way, I'm so impressed with this outlay you've got going on here.
Oh, of course.
You have got some terrific handwriting.
Oh, thank you so much.
This is impressive. This is very impressive. They've got a few decisions to make, right? Keegan Murray next year. Can they extend him? Do they want to extend him? He's coming up on his 4th year. So if they don't get a contract done before the start of the year, then he becomes a restricted free agent at the end of next year. And you know he's going to get offers, right? So how are they going to handle that? Is that going to become like a Kuminga situation with the Warriors now, where Kuminga is a free agent at the end of the season? So that's a big piece that we'll all be kind of interested in looking at. What's going to happen with DeRozan, right? Is he going to stay for his remaining 2 years? Will they move on? I mean, Levine's going to be here. That's the one thing I feel almost 100% confident in saying. Sabonis is going to be here too. They're not trading Sabonis in the offseason. I can't even envision a situation where that happens. But I'm sure Domantas is thinking about all of those things. But if you're asking me about Sabonis and whether he's going to be in a Kings uniform next year, I would be beyond shocked if he's not a King next year.
Okay. All right. That gives me some... I'll be able to sleep tonight.
I don't see how you could trade De'Aaron Fox and then Sabonis all within a year.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question is, do you think that there's a chance that Sabonis could, replicate the Fox situation? Because, kind of started the same. Fox was, seeking some answers from the front office.
I don't, because the Fox situation was a little different in the sense that Fox was becoming a free agent, right? Okay. He had 1 year left on that deal. And the Kings, could they have waited till the offseason to make a move with De'Aaron Fox? Yeah, they could have. But they also knew it was kind of expiring. It's like that gallon of milk that's in your fridge, right? It's got a shelf life. And as it continues on, it works against you. I mean, if the Kings had come back next year without having been able to work a deal with De'Aaron Fox, and they had to contemplate the possibility of losing Fox and getting nothing back in return, that was obviously an unacceptable situation. It's complicated, the fact that he's a Rich Paul, member, and I don't know I'm sure it played into it a little bit with everything else going on. But the Sabonis with 3 years, he's locked into that contract. I mean, the Kings are not in jeopardy of losing Sabonis. Is Sabonis going to sit out and not play? Of course not. That's not this guy. This guy is the ultimate warrior. So, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk to the organization about direction. He wants to win like anybody else, but he's not going anywhere.
I don't see a Jimmy Butler situation with Domantas Sabonis.
Well, again, Butler
two different players.
Yeah.
And again, Butler had an expiring contract, right? So that makes it different. Now, if you were going to ask me the situation, Sabonis' contract's up at the end of next year, I would say, all bets are off. Like, they got to figure out how to re-sign him, or they possibly have to consider moving him, right, if he's not going to re-sign. But they're not in that situation.
I'm glad.
Yeah, me too.
That gives me, I'm just happy to hear from you.
And I will say, I can't imagine any situation where Malik Monk's not on this team next year.
Right. I think that's all, especially with his contract. I mean, I think to me, Malik Monk's contract is the most valuable contract in the entire league.
Yeah, I would say Monk,
none.
Levine, and Sabonis are all going to be a part of this team next year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just the fact
that Keegan, of
course, Keegan will be there.
I really hope he could get the Keegan deal
we'll
done.
see. We'll see if Keegan gets extended too. So, I mean, that leads me to my next question too. With Keegan potentially being extended, you look at the rest of the roster. Who do you think will still be on the rest of this roster? Will Trey Lyles be a person that will be on this roster? Will there be other bench pieces like Jonas Valanciunas that will still be on this roster? Jake LaRavia that will become a free agent too at the end of this season as well.
And LaRavia, I think, is a guy you want to bring back, but he's going to have other offers too. And again, as we talk about it, saying you think Sabonis is going to be back, Levine's going to be back. Let's say you offer Murray that big contract, then all of a sudden a large portion of your salary cap is gone too. So if whether it's Monty McNair or there's a new GM, it's like you start having to think about, is that the nucleus you want to have? Are those your four main guys moving forward? And we're kind of seeing it right now. Levine hasn't had a full season. We know there's stuff going on with him as well. But if you determine that four isn't good enough to become a top four team in the West, then maybe you are looking at making a move for one or two of these players in a blockbuster deal. I think everything's on the table. I mean, let's be honest. This team right now is fighting for a play-in situation, right? They're fighting for a 10 spot, at best a 9 spot. That's not good enough. I mean, the Kings ownership, they want to be a playoff team. This team is not living up to that expectation. Last year, the organization looked at it as a failure, not getting into the playoffs. It would be looked at the same way this year. So, I don't think you can say for certain that anything isn't off the table right now.
Yeah, the only thing that is certain is that changes will be made. We don't know what they are, but something will happen. Back onto the Keegan Murray situation. We are enormous fans of Keegan Murray.
I mean, I'm wearing the Keegan Murray shirt.
We love Keegan Murray.
We got it ready.
And he's one of our younger players, homegrown player. Another homegrown player we have is Devin Carter. So my question to you is, what do you think their ceiling is? Like, start with Keegan Murray and then Devin Carter. Like their player comparison ceiling for these guys in their career?
Oh boy, for Keegan Murray, we've seen him become a much better all-around player, right? But his offense did suffer. I can't say that year two was a step back, because in some respects he became a much better defensive player, better rebounder, all of that. This year, I felt like he was taking a step back till late. Now, he's been really good in the last several games. Tonight, he only scored 5 points, but I didn't care about that because he was doing so many other things on the floor. Obviously, he's gotten much stronger. He can drive to the basket now. But what we need to see from Keegan to step up to become a all-star caliber player is he's got to be a guy who is aggressively seeking 20 points a game. The Kings need him to be a reliable scorer. He can't be a guy who's just kind of an all-around contributor, and he's got to be one of their main pieces, right? So that's where I'm looking for him. I felt like this year, I have to say on the edge with how he's playing now, it's probably a step up. I'm encouraged with what I'm seeing, and he's been shooting the 3 ball a lot better too, but he needs to be back to that first year letting it fly 3 ball shooter. That's what the NBA needs, and that's what this team needs. I mean, fundamentally, this team, you could just simply say it's not a good 3-point shooting team and it's a terrible 3-point defending team. And that could that alone could explain the record right now. So I think Keegan certainly has to get back to where he was in his rookie year, shooting the ball with all the improvements that he's made.
Yeah, and it's important that you mentioned that we were not a good 3-point shooting team and not a good defending 3-point shooting team because
and it's a 3-point shooting league.
It is 100%. And shout out to Jack Dan, the Kings fan. He made a tweet about this and also a TikTok. Shout out to him. But
you can win without shooting the 3-point ball a lot. Look at Oklahoma City; they don't shoot the 3 ball a lot, but
they get to the free throw line though.
They do. That's true.
But he did have a tweet and a TikTok post that the Kings are projected to become one of the worst defending 3-point shooting teams in the regular season.
Yeah.
So, like you mentioned earlier, Scott, like those wins, we look at the San Antonio game where they made 21 threes. You look at other games like that where teams have made 20 plus threes. And we've beaten some teams while shooting better than them. But, you talk about that a lot. There's clutch games that are also a factor. But, you tie those two in together, obviously the record could have been a lot more. We could have been sitting up 44 or 45, right in that, right in that thick of the conversation with the 3-8 spot.
Well, no doubt that 3-point shooting is going to have to be addressed, right? That's a key that moving forward they're going to have to figure out, and they're going to have to get some better 3-point shooting around it, right? And I thought, they brought in Doug McDermott to kind of do that a little bit. He hasn't played enough to really give that a fair evaluation or not, but they just haven't been good enough in that respect. Bottom line.
Yeah. Back on that 3-point conversation, the Boston Celtics hit a NBA record 16, was 1,635 threes, and there's still 5 games left. So, yeah, it's a 3-point league. But what's interesting is we have 2 players that are in the top 5 in the 3-point field goal percentage, with Keon Ellis and Zach LaVine at the 4 and 5 slot. And then,
and that's a great point because the Zach LaVine from Chicago hasn't been the Zach LaVine here in Sacramento. I mean, he's had moments. He was Western Conference Player of the Week, right? And as I was getting ready for the Charlotte game tonight, we were talking about it. He had 42 against Charlotte at home, and you almost forget that night when the Kings beat him by 42 before today. Now you remember it, of course, because they blew out Charlotte in Charlotte. But if Zach can become what he was in Chicago, I mean, he in a lot of respects had his best year in the league up until getting traded. So if you assume Zach is going to be back at that production level, that helps a bunch in terms of your 3-point offensively, at least.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then I think with Keon Ellis's elevation, I mean, he could continue to hit open threes. I mean, we've seen him explode for 9 threes in a game. I mean, I think he could be very good. But
he struggled starting, though, at least shooting the ball. It's been a different
100%.
dynamic for him. So, I think obviously the Kings have to address the point guard in the offseason.
yes.
I agree.
I mean, Malik Monk, I think he's done a valiant job filling in for De'Aaron as best he can, but, he's not a true point guard. And he can create, and he's great on pick and rolls in the 2-man game, but he's not a true point guard. Keon Ellis probably is not a starting point guard in this league right now. He's a good defender. He's really a combo player. So the Kings have to find some sort of solution at the point.
I agree. And I think that when you talk about both Malik Monk and Keon Ellis, those two are exactly combo guards, right? Obviously, they both do completely different things on offense, but their role is being a combo guard that can, one can be a defender and then one is a playmaker and a scorer.
Right.
So having that true point guard on a team, whether it's through the draft, if we end up in that spot where we somehow get the 12th pick in the draft, most likely I don't think we drop down because you have to really bank on, either.
I don't see there being a scenario where we're going to get into the top 12 and protect the pick, and that's that would be the absolute worst case scenario, not to make the play in and finish 13 or 14, right? And then the lottery, and then you don't even get your pick.
Exactly.
But that is a possibility, obviously.
Mm-hmm. So at that point, you're almost looking at going into free agency and trying to find the best point guard available. So you almost have to kind of, or through trades, you either flip DeRozan and you somehow are able to get a point guard that can fit your team.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are going into this offseason. I think I agree, Scott. The biggest thing that the Kings need is a true point guard in this team.
They do, because they get really stagnant at times too. And DeMar's a great scorer late, and you want him to have the ball. He's clutch. But we've seen it's been a little too much just dribble, ISO ball. And they've really struggled in games that have been close. I mean, the Indiana game certainly stands out, where they played a great game for over 3 quarters. The last 8 minutes, they couldn't score. It was isolation after isolation play, and that's something that has to be addressed.
Yeah, I think the Kings are at their best when they're, playing with pace and, everyone's touching the ball. I think that's when the Kings are the most fun to watch as well. Yeah, I mean, when someone's holding the ball for 20 seconds and, waiting for their opportunity to shoot the ball. If it's not going in, it's not going to work. But yeah, so that's kind of the current state of the Sacramento Kings team. I mean, anything could happen.
Yeah, but you asked about Devin Carter too.
Yes,
so we'll just get to that. I mean, obviously, in some respects, it's kind of been a lost year for him because he didn't come in until January. He's been banged up. What we've seen is he's a tremendous defensive player, plays with tremendous effort. He can change games with his defensive play. His shot needs a lot of work. It's a unique shot, and maybe that's what stays, and it gets better just that way, but it is certainly unconventional. He's not a true point guard either. At least he hasn't really shown that. He's not a guy you want handling the ball consistently, and he was a point guard in college. So again, trying to figure out where he fits in the overall scheme of things. Is he going to be, he definitely can be a contributor on a team, but is he going to be a main rotation guy? I think that's still yet to be determined, and that's a little concerning for your first round pick right now. You got, in all fairness to him, you have to give him a full season of being healthy to see how much he's going to improve. I love his heart. I love his toughness. I think there's an upside to him, but I need to see that. I'm not convinced of where he kind of fits into the overall scheme of things right now.
Yeah, the sample size is still pretty small. Like you said, coming in January, I think he's only played about not even 30 games. So
I'd probably say like maybe 15, 20.
And when you've seen Keon and Devin and LaRavia out on the floor together, I mean, they can get after people. Like, that's been, in some respects, their best unit on the floor at times.
I agree.
That's how we've won those big games, was because of them.
So you can't discount that. He's definitely a Doug type guy. If Doug's coming back, he wants guys who are playing hard, and you never question Devin Carter out there on the floor.
1,000%. Yeah, I love what you just said with that 3-man defensive unit. I mean, that is good luck. Good luck going against them. But yeah, so a 23-year career of covering the Sacramento Kings. Can you take us back to what it was like when you first arrived on the scene? Like what year it was, where the Kings were currently at, and like what you were doing within the organization?
Yeah, and I have to say it's 29.
29.
Yeah, 29.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's coming up on 30. So, when I first got out of college, I was at UC Davis, and I was lucky enough to get a job at 1140. And, one of my main jobs was just being a reporter for the team, going out and getting sound and talking to players and all those types of things. And, 30 years ago, that was the Gary St. Jean regime.
Yeah.
Dang.
And that's
was before our time. I mean,
that was, when Mitch had just come to town.
Oh, my God.
Getting traded for Billy Owens. Still my all-time favorite Kings memory, and I don't see how it will ever change, was Game 3 of the playoffs when we played Seattle at home. We'd come back. We had beaten Seattle, who was the number 1 seed, on the road in Game 2. Mitch had an incredible game, but unfortunately got hurt. Couldn't play in Game 3. But you came back to Arco Arena, and there was a 45-minute standing ovation before the game even started. The place was absolutely rocking, and it was great against the Warriors 2 years ago in that Game 1. That's the best moment so far at Golden One Center. But the moment in '96, being out at Arco Arena for that ovation, because it was the first time since the opening season that the Kings had made the playoffs. It was incredible. I still have chills on my spine from that, but. It was fun to cover Brian Grant, rookie year, Michael the Animal Smith.
Wow.
Going through St. Jean, and then Eddie Jordan, who took over after that. And you could go on and on with the list of coaches. And then finally, when Rick Adelman came in, and that whole era was just amazing. That run of 8 straight playoffs under Adelman, and Jay Will, who got it all started for the Kings. I mean, everybody thinks, the Weber and Vlade. It was Jay Will who got it started.
Oh, absolutely.
Weber came in and joined the party. Vlade came in as the biggest free agent ever. Peja was the great draft pick. I'll never forget, when Peja got drafted, Jeff Petrie came out. It was, they had the draft party at Arco Arena, and they announced Peja Stokovich, and nobody knew who he was. Everybody thought they were going to draft John Wallace, and people were just upset.
Oh my God.
Booing Jeff Petrie on the stage about the Peja draft pick. So, you remember moments like that for sure. And those were electric, just fun days. And then when Bibby came in, it elevated to an extra level. The whole rivalry with the Kings, still, you'll never get over the Game 7 loss. I was traveling for the playoffs at that time, so I was going to all the games in Dallas, went to the entire Lakers series in 2002. I was sitting along the baseline when Robert Horry hit the shot. So I'm looking at it straight on, and I'm sitting next to our broadcast team. Jim Kozor was a part of the team at the time, was there. Jason Ross. I was working the game. So I don't think I was sitting with him, but to our right-hand side was like Dustin Hoffman and his kid, and you see the entire Staples Center, Staples at that time, just erupt as Horry hits that shot, right? And I saw Vlade tap it back out. Horry in slow motion hit it, and we are just sitting there in just stunned silence. And I'm just looking around, and I'm like, this is the most depressing sports moment I've ever witnessed in my life. It was an incredible, surreal scene, right? But it was one of the big moments ever. And then Game 6, when it felt for sure we had it won, we're in the fourth quarter with a big lead, and then all the free throws against us.
Oh my gosh.
And when Bibby got hit in the face by Kobe, and it was a foul on Bibby. But having said all of that, again, we had our chances. We lost Game 1 in that series. We lost home court right away. We got it back. We lost Game 7. We missed 14 free throws. So all of that, but it's like I'm still depressed about that series, right? Because that was our championship ring, and it's never been as close since. But those were just great moments. And then, of course, when Adelman left, that was kind of the start of the end. I mean, obviously Weber getting hurt, then getting traded, but it really felt like when Adelman left, it just kind of started the whole kind of, slow down, right? Over a long period of years before it came back a couple of years ago with the rebirth and with Mike Brown and getting back into a playoff versus Golden State. So, but it's been a long run. There's been a lot of ups and downs, along the way for sure. But it's been fun, and I'm from Sacramento. I was born in LA, but I moved up here at a young age, and it's like a lifelong Kings fan. So you live the journey like you guys right now in your cycle. So
that was amazing to hear. Let me just start by saying that. But I could tell there's a smile on your face just talking about all your experiences with the team. You started with the Rattle Seattle series. That is unbelievable, and then seeing from Mitch Richmond to Jay Will. Let's talk about Jay Will, because
man, what a box office that guy is.
Man.
I think he led jersey sales that NBA season. A guy from Sacramento.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
White Chocolate is still like one of the great nicknames ever, right? And I always just wonder back, because obviously Mike Bibby was instrumental, and he kind of carried the Kings in that Lakers series. I mean, clutch shot after clutch shot. But I just always kind of wonder what the organization would have looked like had they kept Jay Will with that team. And I don't blame Jeff Petrie for trading for Bibby. I mean, it was the right move, and Bibby was fantastic. But boy, there's a part of me just would have loved to have seen Jay Will with that team for a few more years.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Him winning a championship in a Sacramento uniform would have been insane just the way that he plays the game. We talked about it. His razzle-dazzle moves, king of box office at that time. He was the player that was making the highlight plays on SportsCenter. It was incredible. Amazing. Incredible. I think there was a play where one of my favorite moments from Jay Will was against Golden State, and that was at home where he comes and steals it, inbound, behind the back to Weber, dunk. It was incredible moment.
Yeah, and I'll never forget even like the series versus the Jazz that went 5 games that I thought we were going to win up 2-1, then we'd lose a game 5. There were 5-game series at that point.
Right, in the first round.
I remember being with the Kings in Utah when they won Game 2, and that was the game that Weber laid out John Stockton, right?
Wow.
And flying back from that game and coming back, and there's literally hundreds of fans at the airport just waiting for this team, across the fence.
We've experienced
just great
that
moments
before.
like that, right?
Yeah, we went to the airport when they clinched the playoff playoff
berth,
drought
yeah.
berth. Yeah. But
Still what a moment.
What was it like? Is it comparable to say that when Tyrese Halliburton got traded for DeMontis Sabonis, that was equivalent to the Jason Williams trade for Mike Bibby?
I could see how it would look like in this era. I have to think of that. It wasn't as emotional for me as like Jay Will, but I'm thinking for like your era, if that would be the equivalent. I don't know. Jay Will captured the crowd, and Tyrese did too. Like, he was a fan favorite for sure. But the Kings were winning. The Kings weren't really winning with Tyrese at that point yet. And that's one of the great debates now. I mean, you look at it, and the Kings ended up moving from De'Aaron Fox. They made so many moves to build for De'Aaron Fox, right? So, like, if you look back and you go, what if you had kept Tyrese, knowing you weren't going to keep De'Aaron, would you have made the trade for Sabonis? And you can't argue against it because Sabonis has been so great. Like, there's no argument where you could say that's a bad trade. But you can look at Tyrese and what he's doing now too, and boy, think, what if he were in a Kings uniform? So that's a tough one. But no, I still feel like the Jay Will captured Sacramento unlike any other because of the way he played. And Tyrese is incredible now, but I think he's built some of that in Indiana that didn't have in Sacramento.
That's definitely, that's what I would say. Is he got way better once he got traded. What was the fan reaction and emotion once their favorite player to wear a Kings uniform got traded with Jay Will?
I think it was tough. I mean, but Mike Bibby quickly won them over because the Kings continued to win in playoff series, right? And then you got to the Western Conference Finals, and Bibby hit that still hit probably the biggest shot in Kings history, the Game 5 jumper against the Lakers, right? That's still, if you had to pick one shot in Kings history that was the biggest shot over the last 40 years, that's probably it.
1,000%.
I agree.
So I think Mike Bibby's play made it okay. But if Bibby had come in and hadn't been Mike Bibby, it would have been really, really, really hard on him.
It would have been a different conversation for sure.
Yeah, jeez.
No doubt.
So the we like to call it the golden era of the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, and that's what it's been.
Yeah,
for sure.
So during that time, you got to experience, multiple playoff runs.
Yeah.
You got to see Western Conference Finals runs. You've got to see, when Webb got hurt. You got to see it all.
I was there at Game 7 when Weber came back and missed the three-pointer
against
in
Minnesota, right?
Yeah, that was brutal too.
I always think about that series as just like another what-if series, between that.
Because Weber came back. That was a 60-win team. People forget how great that team was with Weber out. And then they tried to integrate Webb back in. There was a lot of controversy whether he should be starting, coming off the bench. He started. The team still played well. It wasn't the conference final, it was the semifinal, I want to say.
Second round,
second round. But never lived up to that potential, right? And then, just seeing Weber go down in the Dallas series, was probably one of the toughest moments ever. Yeah,
you got to see the Anthony Peeler scuffle.
Yeah, Anthony Peeler.
Yeah.
We did
I like the Anthony Peeler.
Yeah, Anthony Peeler. He didn't take any crap from Kevin Garnett, man. Because
he stood his ground.
Kevin Garnett's a tough nosed guy.
Well, and part of the charm back in that day was the bench mob. I mean, Bobby Jackson and Scott Pollard and John Barry, and you had Mad Max for a year, and I mean that second unit. Like, those scrimmages were real.
And then you got Keon Clark, one of my favorite Kings bench players of all time. So, that year I felt like
Jimmy Jackson, another one.
Yeah. So it's like guys that just came up and just were aggressive. That bench unit was Didn't take any crap from anybody.
Yeah, no,
so
you had a
I always
solid
will
10.
say that would be my favorite year that I wish we made the Western Conference Finals in that year and beaten Minnesota, because that would have been a really good opportunity for us to get our revenge against the Lakers that year too.
No doubt. And it's just such an incredible era. And to me, some of the favorites moments during those times were the matchups versus the Mavs and Nash and Nowitzki together.
Oh, man.
You know, I always think, what if the Mavs had just kept Steve Nash? You know, I mean, him and Nowitzki together for a decade, boy, what would they have done? And Mark Cuban, what's he thinking for, making that trade? And obviously Steve Nash became even better in Phoenix.
He won MVPs immediately after getting traded.
He did, but those Dallas-Sacramento series were just remarkable. Absolutely remarkable, I
think they called it the West Coast shootout, I think, between...
Try to remember. I just remember so many great games, especially in Dallas. Bobby Jackson had the game of his life in one playoff game down in Dallas where they won a game 4 to come back home, but they were so competitive. So competitive.
So you talked about Jason Williams being one of your favorites. Besides Jason Williams, who was like your favorite player to cover during that era?
Oh, wow. Just in terms of covering as a player, not talking about ability, just like who was fun to be around.
Yeah, fun to be around, fun, obviously like drawn to them on the court. Who would you say?
I was, like I mentioned, I was a big fan early on when I first started of Brian Grant, Michael Animal Smith, because they were both rookies, and just it was fun to talk to them. And that was just a different era, different time. I thought that was, just a lot of fun to be around those guys. That era kind of holds a lot to me, because that's, I was kind of like your guys' age and just kind of getting
your foot in the door.
Yeah. And so like it was all new to me, and it was really pretty cool with that team. And then, obviously I got a chance to see Webb pretty well, and he was just the best, right? I mean, great guy. Like, he would come on my weekend show and just do an interview, right? And that's just so cool, right? So like having that opportunity was fantastic, and never forget that or be thankful for moments like that.
That's incredible. Yeah, Chris Webber, I mean, Sacramento legend. Is there any other players that you got a chance to like get like a real relationship with outside of, just covering them?
I can't really say yes, no. It was never a situation where I was going over to players' houses or things like that. At that time, I actually, probably was closer to the Maloofs during that era too. Joe and Gavin were so accessible, and I had them on the shows a lot, and got to know them, and they were characters, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, but they did a lot of great for the city too. I know how things went at the end, and that was tough, and but I always choose to remember the great times, right? And that golden era, and they were certainly a huge part of everything. So I'm always indebted to them. It's like, my mom would come to a couple of games, and I introduced my mom to Joe Maloof, and just nice as thankful can be. Invited us up to his suite.
Oh my
made
gosh,
her
that's
dinner.
awesome.
Like all that stuff. And then like I saw him back at the arena a few weeks later, and Joe came up to me and he's like, Scott, and I'm not going to try to impersonate his voice. I used to do that. But he's just like, so nice to meet your mom. She's a super person. Like, and this was weeks after the event, right? So like, I always remember those things, and it's unfortunate the way things went down. It all worked out for a common good, because to have this downtown arena now, and like where the Kings are at, just in terms of the stability in Sacramento, that's such a great thing, right?
That is so cool. When you were interviewing players and owners of the team back then, do you have any like special moments that were shared on your show?
I'm trying to remember. It's like it was such a crazy era. Like certainly during one of the low points when it looked like the Kings were being sold, right? There was just a lot of stuff going on there. That was tough. That was really tough. And I was really involved with covering that. And what people forget too, going back to Jim Thomas, the prior owner, like it looked like the Kings were moving to Nashville. And so I was down at a lot of city council meetings trying to figure out what was going on and the restructure of the loan with Arco Arena. I'll never forget there was a city council member who I got to know. And anyways, long story short, before the council meeting, he came up to me in private. He goes, "We've got the votes. Kings are staying." Right.
Wow.
So I kind of
So you were the first to
had that
know.
scoop on that way back. I'm not gonna call him out, but I mean, it ended up to being true. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, just there's so many things that happen over such a long period of time, right?
That's incredible.
That's a great story.
Do you have any? I mean, that was actually one of my follow-up questions that I had written down here. Was the years from 2007 to 2015.
Yeah,
those were obviously probably the darkest years of our franchise.
Tough years.
So, if you can, would you be able to just describe what it was like? Covering a team that was just almost unbearable to watch for a very long time, and then transition into where the team was almost sold, and like how the city came together to save the team.
Well, and I work with Carmichael Dave too, and I give him so much credit because from the fan base, he was really the rallying person, right? And he deserves a ton of credit for helping be a large part of that. But just being around it at the time, I'll never forget being at the Laker game, the last game at Arco Arena. It seemed to be the last game where the Kings rallied from like a 20-point deficit, sent the game to overtime, and then lost that game. But then the more important thing afterwards, everybody staying inside the arena and Dave getting up on a ladder and talking to everybody. And,
That's crazy.
it was just amazing times. And, after the game, went out to a couple local places in the area, just nothing but Kings employees and people just hanging out till wee hours of the morning, just thinking this is probably the last time we're all going to be together. We were waiting for the announcement the next day. Kings are going to Anaheim. And then, of course, there was a year reprieve. And then, survival. And then, of course, when it came out, I think it was Martin Luther King holiday weekend when the tweet came out from David Falk's daughter that the Kings were moving to Seattle.
Yeah.
And then just caught off on guard and just thinking, oh, this is a done deal. Kings are moving. And then the rallying cry from Kevin Johnson and just everything else that went on with that. I mean, those times are just like, they're surreal where we're at now because we're so fortunate. And you have to give this current ownership group so much credit, to get this downtown arena built, the entire city council. Darryl Steinberg deserves so much credit in this too, because at that time he was the Senate, leader, and without him, moving forward on a lot of the building construction things that needed to get done, this doesn't get done. So, just around the board, there's so many people to appreciate and thank for this.
There's a lot of unsung heroes for, keeping the team in Sacramento. I just couldn't imagine growing up in the city without our beloved team. I mean, it would.
That's the biggest thing, Again, Wednesday was a totally low moment, right? And, you start just feeling numb about what's going on with this team, and we feel better. It's amazing what one win does, even though it's just you beat Charlotte, but you all of a sudden
beat one of the bad
we're
teams
smiling again today, and like, okay, maybe we can advance in the play-in. We're talking about possibly matching up against Oklahoma City, and what if they win a game or two against OKC? We're allowing ourselves to believe again. So it's amazing what one win can do. But in the big picture of things, you can't even imagine not having a team in this area. I mean, can you imagine if we haven't had a pro franchise in this area for 10 years? I know we have the A's here now, and that's cool, but it's nothing like what we've had with the Kings.
I agree.
Yeah, I used to live in Southern California when I went to college, and everyone would ask me like what's Sacramento like? And I would say the Sacramento Kings. And like when people would come to visit, they would say, what are we going to do? Sacramento Kings. Like that's what the city is, built on, the roots of the team. And like, it's so special to us.
We built this city. I mean, that was the song when it first came.
Right.
on basketball.
On rock and roll. Jefferson Starship, baby.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously this team means so much for people our age, but I mean, for you who've seen like everything, it's just, I can't even imagine.
It just to kind of put it in perspective too, the first year they came here, I was in high school. And I would sit out with my friends, and we would get lawn chairs, and we would wait to get standing room only tickets in the first Arco. And we're not talking about the second Arco. We're talking about the 10,333 seat Arco Arena that were all bench seats. So we would buy our tickets. We'd sit up in the rafters, which was a great seat, because it's such a small arena, and then stand out afterwards as the players, visiting team buses were pulling around and all that type of stuff. I mean, those are great memories and great things I share with friends my age.
That is unbelievable.
And like for me, a lot of games weren't on TV in that era. People forget that most of the home games weren't televised.
No.
So I would listen to Gary Gerald call games on the radio, and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is so cool. And so probably one of my best experience, and maybe like if you were to push me, it's probably my best experience ever, is when I had my first chance to work on the Kings broadcast, and I'm sitting next to Gary Gerald. And here I am, the person who I listened to growing up to, thinking, boy, this would be the coolest thing ever. And here I am working with him. And I told him that, and that was such a cool moment. And Gary's still calling games, and he's in his 40th year. He's the only voice this team's ever had. And he is not only one of the greatest broadcasters, but he's just one of the greatest people ever. He is like the greatest person ever. And so to be able to work with him, and now I golf with him, and just
there you go.
It's surreal, really. It's super cool.
That's a full circle moment. I mean, I was going to ask you who your early inspirations were in the media field, and you'd safely say that it's the G-Man.
Gary's certainly right up there. I mean, I have to admit, being from LA, I still root for LA teams. I'm a huge Dodger fan, and not just because they're winning now, but I've always been a lifelong Dodger fan. I've never been a Giants fan. I'm kind of a mixture because my family roots are from LA. Both my mom and dad, they grew up in LA, and we'd go down as kids, and I'd watch Dodger games. And I was a Showtime Lakers fan, huge. I'm a Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, Michael Cooper, Lakers fan, right?
Right.
And I'm a Rams fan. But when I grew up, they were in LA. They moved to St. Louis. Now I'm back in LA, of course. So part of my thing was, when the Kings came, I obviously was a Kings fan from the start, but when they started in '85, that was the Lakers run. So I was a huge Lakers fan too.
I mean, that's what got you into the sport.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lakers Celtics, is still the greatest. That era of the Lakers Celtics is still the greatest rivalry in basketball, in my opinion. But once it got to be Kings Lakers, and the Lakers were Phil Jackson and Shaq and Kobe, I was no longer a Laker fan. I was such a massive Kings fan, right? Sitting courtside and hearing the cowbells, and Phil Jackson, and him having to move his team from the bench out onto the floor because the Cowboys bells were annoying him so much, was fantastic, right? And so I started hating the Lakers big time, right? So
especially after what Robert Horry did. I mean,
oh yeah,
the Robert Horry shot was just crushing. I can still see that shot going straight through, and just the celebration of that arena. It's you probably have similar moments, your greatest sports moment. I have several great sports moments. That was one of the great sports moments, but it was the most crushing.
Yeah.
I think that honestly is the most crushing sports moment I witnessed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like our Steph Curry 50 piece against us,
Yes.
And not only for me, I was at Game 5 of that Warriors series too, and there was a moment where Curry was dribbling around Barnes, hits an and one, and that was the soul crushing moment where because we were down 2 at that moment, and we were fighting and coming back from that game, and Curry just hitting that dagger and one just was so deflating.
No doubt. And, the case with Horry, if he doesn't make that shot, the Kings are up 3-1 coming home. I mean, the Lakers could have won 3 straight, of course. But
it's hard now. It's
feels
hard
unlikely.
to do.
Yeah.
And, we all know who we would have played.
Oh, we play the Nets, and we sweep them like the Lakers did.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's why, we have some friends that are Lakers fans, and we will always have a grudge towards that city for that reason only.
I have to say, it is fun watching LeBron and Luka play.
I can't believe that.
I'm still in shock. I'm still in shock. Yeah. We on the podcast have thoroughly discussed the Lakers' future before that trade went down, because an AD-led Lakers team, I don't think has the ceiling that what Luka and the Lakers are now. That I think it's insane that the future of the Lakers is still intact. It's still alive. They can build around 26-year-old Luka.
True. It still is somewhat short term in the sense of, is LeBron going to play 1 more, 2 more years? We'll see. But you're right. They have the next 10 years generational player for sure. I still can't figure out why the Lakers didn't take Mark Williams. Like, I still don't understand why they rescinded that trade.
Like just hold off.
And I know he didn't play tonight, but even if I didn't do the physical, so they know more than I do. But from the outside looking in, I would have taken a chance with them. And as good as Dalton Connect is, you've got Austin Reeves, you've got Luka. If you had a big man like a Mark Williams with that potential, my goodness.
Yeah, Jackson Hayes is not it.
And you could
he's better with them. I mean, he's certainly contributing because he can take all the lobs and everything else. But Mark Williams has got a chance to be a great center.
Yeah, the Lakers could have just stashed him this season and then give him all the best doctors in the world and get him right for the future.
That's what they do.
Yeah,
it's just unfortunate. The team that we hate the most. Because, the conversations that we were having about the Lakers is, the Lakers have to make a tough decision with LeBron. Do they trade him to try and get some value back for the future?
The Lakers are not trading LeBron. He has a no trade clause for
exactly.
But they're not trading him. Yeah.
But then, it's just the way that it works out.
Just being competitive.
They might trade if LeBron asks for that trade, which he's not going to.
No. He spent the most years in his career, which is crazy to think about with the Lakers.
No, that was before the whole Luka trade. It's just, what do you do once LeBron walks out? It's a total rebuild from there, but they found a way.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, Rob Pelinka, GM of the year for that alone.
And that game on Wednesday between Dallas and LA in Dallas is the regular season game of the year by far. And that Dallas crowd reaction when Luka comes in with a Laker uniform on is going to be unreal.
I know. We will be tuned in for that for sure.
But the good news is we get a national television game right after that. So,
hey, Kings Denver is a big game, but that Dallas LA game, I venture to say, is going to be one of the biggest regular season games in the last 10 years in the league.
Oh, it'll be the highest rating.
And AD will be healthy for that game too. So
he should be. I was surprised he didn't play tonight. I'm interested to find more about that out. But I got to think he's playing next Wednesday.
Well, then they get the back-to-back with the Clippers tomorrow too. So he'll probably be available for that game tomorrow. So I'm assuming that he'll be full ready to go for that game against the Lakers. And like I said, Scott, I think that's going to be probably one of the biggest nationally televised games.
What if Luka goes for like a 30-20-20 game or something crazy?
Gosh. I love
Giannis did that. He got a triple-double.
He did.
He had 20 assists.
He had a 35-15-20 game.
Yeah.
First guy ever last night.
For a 6'11 power forward, that's pretty darn
Giannis
good.
To have 20 assists is unreal.
And I have to say, Giannis this year, single best performance I've seen at Golden One Center.
God.
That third quarter where he put on 22 points and 7 rebounds, had a block shot, completely changed that game. It was a man amongst boys out on the floor on that quarter.
Holy cow.
It looks like that every single time he plays us.
He's incredible.
He is unbelievable, especially seeing him live.
Let's be honest, though. Kobe White is the biggest Kings killer of them all.
We have this discussion all the time.
It's the truth.
Do you have a Mount
I would have
Rushmore?
traded for him just so he couldn't play against us.
Do you have a Mount Rushmore of Kings killers? Because we our list changes all the time.
D'Angelo Russell was up there too. He had a 28-point fourth quarter when he was with Brooklyn against us and just destroyed us. PJ Washington would be on your Mount Rushmore. He had a 40-something point game against us.
CJ
McCollum seems to play well against us as well. Yeah.
You could probably name one from every NBA team.
Yeah. Damian Lillard, I think, is another Kings killer too.
Yeah.
That guy just he's a dog.
That's so sad too because you look back at. Jeff Petrie made some absolutely great picks as GM, and he built the team, and he deserves all that credit. At the same time, my opinion, the worst single mistake made during that entire era was taking Thomas Robinson and not taking Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
And the thing I can't understand about it, and again, I'm not in the war room with the Kings, so I don't claim to have that type of knowledge, but by all accounts, from everything I heard, Damian Lillard, when they worked him out, they loved him. Like, they thought this guy was the next great point guard. So going into draft night, when we were positioned there and Lillard was still there, I was fully anticipating we were taking Damian Lillard. I was shocked when we took Thomas Robinson. Shocked. Absolutely shocked.
There's been some questionable picks in our tenure.
And Scott Pollard, who, by the way, it's so great that he's doing so well right now.
Yes,
Such an incredible story, to have a heart transplant.
Unbelievable.
And to survive, and like all the love out to Scott Pollard. But we had him on the radio the next day asking about Thomas Robinson, and he's like, I got to be honest with you. Like, I don't think this guy is a first round pick. I don't see it.
He knew.
So
if you were to go, if you had the power to redo a singular move in the Kings history.
Oh man.
I know you just mentioned the Thomas Robinson, but if there's one move that could be as easy as a coach firing or, a draft pick, what do you think? Because you've seen a lot. You've seen a lot of things with this organization.
You're looking over 40 years with that one.
That's why it's the best question for you.
That's a tough one.
Especially working 29 years, too. You've seen a lot.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you can't say this is like the worst mistake, but I'm just looking in terms of draft picks, right? I mean, obviously the Luka thing stands out, of course, with taking Marvin Bagley. I mean, you can't even say any more than that, right? Looking back, like the year we took Tyreke Evans 4, which was a good pick. Tyreke was a good player, but that's the year Steph Curry went 7. So like, I always think back, like we really allowed Golden State to become Golden State, because we also took Jimmer Fredette in the year that Klay Thompson went to the Warriors afterwards. So we could have had the Splash Brothers here in Sacramento. Like, there's no reason our backcourt could not have been Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. And just think what that would have been like.
And with a little Damian Lillard sprinkled into it.
And then, but even then, we probably wouldn't get DeMarcus Cousins, because that definitely.
Sure. I mean, you can't ever isolate one event is a chain event to the next, right?
Exactly.
So that's totally unfair to go that way. And in the same light, like for us to be able to get De'Aaron Fox after the Lakers drafted Lonzo Ball, which seemed like a mistake at the time, and he's had a lot of injuries, but I mean, De'Aaron Fox killed Lonzo Ball in college.
He sure did.
he treated Lonzo Ball like he sees John Morant every time he plays.
He sure did.
That's how us like.
But from a coaching standpoint, I feel like the era, like when Rick Adelman was moved on, that's kind of where it all kind of came down. I mean, you look at that 8-year run of being in the playoffs, and then you can say after that it just went off for 17 years. So
during that, terrible, drought that we had, who was like the one player that you thought could turn it around? Did you ever have that thought, or did you just know deep down that it was never going to get better until it eventually did?
Well, it honestly did. You mentioned DeMarcus Cousins, but when you had Isaiah Thomas and DeMarcus Cousins, and I mean, in terms of some of the most fun, Isaiah Thomas, you have to put up there, Mr. Irrelevant, right? The last pick in the draft.
The original pizza guy.
Yeah, exactly. And for him to do what he did, and then, okay, worst trade ever might be letting Isaiah Thomas go for absolutely nothing back in return. Right?
That's when he went to Phoenix, right?
Yeah, and we got nothing, absolutely nothing back in return for that move. And then he goes on to Boston and almost becomes MVP. So that was rough. And obviously the whole thing when Michael Malone got let go was rough in that era too, because you feel like you're building a little bit. And, the Kings were off to a decent start that year, and then DeMarcus got sick. I'm trying to remember what he had. It was something along the lines of a pneumonia or something, where he got sick for a period of time, and then they lost a few games, and then Michael Malone got relieved of the duties. And you just kind of wonder back, well, what would that ever have been like, if you have Michael Malone here, who seemingly had a great relationship with DeMarcus Cousins in his prime. You kept Isaiah Thomas, would it have been the same? I don't know.
Yeah, although I know we never, broke the curse back then of making the playoffs, but there were a lot of fun moments. Yeah, like you said, I think Isaiah Thomas, that was one of the most fun eras. Just, the guy picked last in the draft, and, he was 60. He was playing unbelievable basketball back then. It was so much fun to watch. And a guy his size, only a very select few people his size could make it in the NBA.
He was amazing.
Yeah,
no
he
question.
was a great, but yeah, even like when we had like Rajon Rondo, like I thought even that era was a little bit of fun. I mean, even like when we got Marco Bellinelli, I was a little excited about that.
Yeah,
that
and then Seth Curry.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some fun moments, even though we always were able to find a fun moment during the bad time.
Of course. I mean, the fact you're watching NBA basketball by itself just makes it fun, right? And Tyreek hitting the half court shot to win the game. You know, I mean, there's been always great moments along the way. You know, it's been a trail of tears in some respect, but I mean, a lot of bright spots. I mean, of course, we would never exchange it for the alternative and not having it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're all about, is just always being that fandom that knows, like, we're some of the most passionate fans in the league without a question.
No doubt. I will also say, because a lot of memories are coming back as we're going back to that era, like for me, it was always fun at Arco because our radio broadcasts were always courtside too. So just being able to sit courtside for a lot of stuff. We're up on the radio side now, up in the concourse, which is still great seats. It's just always cool to be courtside. And a lot of times too, I would be working stats for opposing radio teams or whatnot. So I'm courtside, and like LeBron coming in with the heat and throwing up the dust and like it's falling down on me like that. Super cool.
That's crazy.
That's super cool. Being, you know, I would keep Laker stats sometimes when they came in. So being near the Laker bench and seeing that, like I was telling you, the cowbells affecting Phil Jackson, or just seeing Kobe walk out, you know, like just things like that. Super cool.
Yeah, you've got
super cool.
You know,
but here's the topper. So,
here we go.
So it was the first or second year. I'm trying to remember. It was '96 when the Bulls, when MJ came back, Rodman, Pippen, the year they won 72, right? Mm-hmm. Was it 70 or 72?
It was 72.
72 and 10. So they played here. Their lone appearance was on a Sunday. I was asked to go out to the arena to cover their shoot around in the morning before the game. So I'm out there. I'm with our Kings cameraman. We're the only people there. So after practice, you know, and at that point, I was pretty young. I mean, I was you guys just getting started, right? So my assignment was to get some quotes from Michael Jordan. And I was going to ask him specifically because Michael at that point had said he thought Mitch Richmond was the second best two guard in the league. He said the toughest matchup for him was Mitch. And so we wanted to focus in on that. And they weren't going to use me on camera. I was just getting a handheld mic to get some sound for that. So I went up and I was really nervous. I'm sure I sounded like, Mr. Jordan, could you please answer a couple of questions? You know, and he was super nice, and he spent like 3 or 4 minutes with me just answering some questions. It was a one-on-one, right? And I'm just afterwards, this is the most unbelievable thing, right? And so
a moment you'll never forget.
And the cameraman at the time, he's like, and this was before the era of all digital and everything else. We're still talking beta tapes and like all this stuff, right? So the cameraman at the time, he's like, I got a great picture of Michael and you smiling with each other as he's answering a question. I'm going to blow that up and frame it. Like you see all the great pictures you have here. Like I'm going to have one of those of me interviewing Michael Jordan, right? I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever.
That needs to be framed.
This is the greatest thing ever, right?
That's incredible.
So a couple weeks later, you know, home game comes around and I hadn't heard anything. So I went up to this camera person. I just said, hey, not trying to bother you at all. Just curious if you had a chance to kind of put together that you know photo you were talking about. He's like, Scott, I've been so swamped. He's like, I haven't forgotten about it. You know, you can ask me, no problem whatsoever. I promise I'll get it done. I've just been really busy. And I'm like, no issue whatsoever. That's totally fine. Don't even worry about it, right? So a few more weeks went by. We're kind of getting towards February or March, right? And so I went up to him again. I'm like, hey, look, I don't want to be a pest at all. I'm just curious, like, any chance on this photo? He's like, Scott, I'm so sorry. I've been so busy. This season's been crazy. Like, I promise I will get this to you. Please feel free to remind me all this stuff. I'm like, okay, great. So finally it gets to the end of the season. And, like, now I'm starting to get a little upset because I'm like, am I going to get this photo or not, right? So finally I go up to him. I'm like, hey, I don't want to be a pest. I know the season's coming to an end. Like, is there any chance I'm going to get this picture?
Oh, my God.
And he looks at me and he goes, Scott, I don't even know how to tell you this. He's like, I put the tape in because I was going to, you know, freeze frame it to actually make the photo for you. and like the spool came off the beta tape and all unwound, and I don't have the tape any longer. So I never got the photo.
You never got the photo?
Never got the photo. Never got it.
If only iPhones existed, it would have been so easy.
If this had been 2016 and not 1996, I'd have my photo with me and Michael.
That might be more heartbreaking than the 16-year playoff.
It still bothers me. My uncle at the time, who was just so excited about me getting into sports broadcasting, he's like, that would have been like me and Mickey Mantle talking, right? This is like iconic, like the ultimate, right? So I always think about that, and the cassette just doesn't do justice.
No. That is I feel for you on every single level, because jeez. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to, not meet anyone of that caliber, but like I got to meet Domantas Sabonis, and I gave him a shirt, 90s, if you remember the brand Pro Player, a caricature shirt of his dad. So we did a little jersey swap. I gave him the...
that's cool.
Yeah, so I got to do a moment like that, but even meeting Sabonis, I was a little, trembling over my words, a little bit stuttering, and then, but no cassette, so I got the photo.
Hey,
but
photo makes it real, man.
That's it. But at least you'll have the story, and hey, we believe you. We believe that it happened.
That's 100%.
We believe it happened.
That's 100%.
I do remember, I think I saw that clip in The Last Dance. So
fantastic. I have to rewatch that. That is great. That would have been awesome.
To end the podcast, we want to do a little, just some fun questions.
Okay.
I have some fun questions written down, and RT has some trivia for you. But I want to start. I want to start with this question.
Yep.
So obviously, you've been in the broadcast media space for a long time.
Yeah.
Do you have, or can you give me your starting 5 Sacramento media members?
Oh wow. Oh man. Okay. Well, the point guard is Gary Gerald.
Yeah,
it starts and stops with the G-man.
I love this. This is phenomenal.
The bottom line on that one, there's no question that he is the team captain.
Yes,
and he is running my team. Jerry Reynolds has to be in there as well. Jerry Reynolds. Where would I put him on the team? He's not tall enough to be on the front line, so maybe he's in the backcourt with Gary.
I like that. Okay. That's a great backcourt.
Yeah, great backcourt.
I'll put that in there. Now, are we talking about just overall Sacramento media, or how it pertains to the Kings?
We'll keep it with the Kings. We'll keep it with the Kings.
All right, just wanted to, because honestly, Joe Davidson would be in my top 5 anyway.
We love Joe Davidson. Joe Davidson's phenomenal.
He's Sacramento royalty.
Yes.
But, he hasn't covered the Kings long enough to
make your
put it in there. Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. If we're moving on, the other 3 top 5 going back from the beginning days. Oh man, this is getting tough. I got to put Jason Ross in there too.
We love Jason Ross.
Yeah, Jason Ross has been there for 30 years.
Yeah,
pre-half and post-game host, and he's done a tremendous job. Jason and I went to school together at UC Davis.
Really? Go Aggies.
So we've been friends from college. We were calling college games together.
That's incredible.
So so I got to put him. I'll put him on my front line. Jason tried out for the UC Davis basketball team when he was there, and he was told by the coach that he probably could have made the team, but he wouldn't play a lot. And so Jason had to decide if he wanted to go through all of that. And he decided not to. So, but I'll put him at my swing 3 position.
That's a great position right there for him.
Okay. So now we're moving along. Let's see. I got to have some frontline members here. So, you know what? I have to say, I got to put Marty McNeil in there somewhere too.
Dang.
I loved Marty McNeil.
Eminem.
God rest his soul. He just, to me, if there's like a reporter who I think of covering the team, it would be Marty Mack. Mm-hmm. And I just always loved talking to him too. It just, he had the best stories. He seemed to know the players inside and out. They seemed to love him. He was there during that golden era. So I would put Marty Mack in there. And I get one more spot here.
One more.
Boy, and I'm sure I'm thinking of, or I'm missing somebody who's probably pretty obvious that I haven't gotten to yet. But let me see if I can come up with who else I would put in there. Like over the entire time, I'm just thinking length of service here as much as anything else.
Length of service. You need some vets.
Yes.
You need some vets on your team.
Yes. Okay. Boy, who would be 5th on this list? I've giving you a couple print, give you a radio, give you TV.
He's got bases covered.
Yeah, this is a pretty solid lineup. I love this.
I don't think this team will get beaten, honestly.
No.
I don't know. It's a decent roster.
I like
It's a
the
solid
roster
roster.
right now.
I love it.
Let me think about the fifth one while
yeah,
we go
come back
along.
to it.
Yeah, come back to it.
Yeah,
I'll try and come up with something.
Well, one thing I do want to notice though, you do have some really cool Kings gear on.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
go tell the fans. Obviously, Christo is a big Kings gear collector, and so share us with what you have on, and just tell us the story about how you got it.
How did you buy it? Yeah.
So this was the Kings hockey jersey. I got it as a gift for Christmas. So and over the years, obviously, I've gotten a ton of Kings gear. Your room here, I recognize a lot of it because I have it in some way, shape, or form myself. Not quite everything, but I have some things that you don't as well. But this was just the hockey jersey that they put out one year, and it's super cool, and I kept it along the way and love wearing it. So
I have 2 additional hockey jerseys that I'll show you when we're done that I think you'll really enjoy.
Okay.
They're very, very cool.
Okay, sweet.
And I also have something in there that I'll show you as well.
All right.
My next question, could you just give us another starting 5, but with just all-time Sacramento Kings players?
Okay, like if we're starting like the all-time best 5 or just like 5?
How about like your favorite? Like your favorite 5?
Okay. Well,
whatever's easier.
I'll start with the all-time 5 because I think that's probably easier. Then I'd have to give some thought on like who my personal 5 would be. But I mean, if you're starting a roster of just your top 5, I mean, you're putting De'Aaron at the point. You're putting
that's a great start.
You're putting Mitch at the 2.
Oh, that's a
strong team
great
so far.
start.
You're putting Page at the 3.
Of course.
You're putting Webb at the power forward, and you're putting Vlade at the center. I mean, you could argue maybe there's DeMarcus in there too, but I would go Vlade. I mean, and I know that's virtually the same team during that golden era, but I would substitute Mitchin on that starting 5 and De'Aaron, at the point. And roll with the other 3.
Do you agree with that starting 5?
I think that's the most perfect starting 5 I've ever heard in my entire life.
What about, do you think Sabonis could give Vlade a run for his money for that 5 spot or no?
I don't. I mean,
Sabonis would be on my team.
Sabonis would, he'd be on the roster.
He'd be the first one off the bench.
Same with DeMarcus too. But
yeah.
I mean, just like you said earlier, Scott. I mean, the value that Vlade Divac brought to the city, being the biggest free agent ever.
I mean, you could make a case Sabonis belongs there over Weber too. I mean, if you just look at the numbers,
if he's a 4, right?
Yeah, but I mean, Weber was just so talented.
Yeah, I mean,
so talented.
First team All NBA. Like, how can you not put Chris Webber on there?
Yeah.
How can you not?
Hall
I mean,
of Famer.
that's I have no complaints about that lineup whatsoever. I think that lineup is as good as it gets.
Yeah, I agree.
In terms of some of my favorite Kings favorites, like Spud Webb was one of my all-time Kings favorite.
Yes.
Just love
Spud
him.
Webb.
He would have to be on my team somewhere there. I just absolutely loved watching him. Like I've worked with Harold Presley for a long time, so HP. Like I always kid him. He won the Western Conference Player of the Week honors. Like it was, I think, his second year with the team, and it was the same game that Jerry Reynolds passed out and had to go to the hospital. And
oh my gosh,
the timeline doesn't really work out because Harold hit the shot after Jerry Reynolds had already left. He literally fainted and had to leave the game. And I always remarked to Harold, well, of course, Jerry fainted after actually seeing you hit a 3-pointer to win a game. He couldn't believe it. He passed out. Of course he did.
Gosh.
Oh my god.
But Harold's one of the best in that era. Like Tank Thompson, I love LaSalle Thompson.
Oh my gosh, man!
Such a great guy. Such a great guy. I mean, so like those would probably be some of the more personal relationships that I've built over the years that I would have to throw into that list.
Hey, I love it. I love it.
Reggie Theus is another
Yeah.
one. He's just a great
you
guy.
got to put him in there for
He's
sure.
a great guy.
We
Greg
love-
Ostertag. I love Greg Ostertag.
Oh, man.
He played with the team for 1 year, but I played in a golf tournament with him, and I've had a chance to interview him several times now. Tremendous golfer.
I think doesn't he still golf?
He doesn't golf as much now, but like when he was picking it up, he got down to about a 2 handicap, he told me. And with that 2 index, he was trying to get into the Tahoe celebrity tournament, but they didn't want him. Like it wasn't a big enough name. So
we would have cheered him on.
He probably would have beaten the competition. He was afraid of him.
Yeah. You know who else? Bobby Jackson's one of my all-time favorites.
Step back.
And so before Henry Turner and I were doing game night. I was doing the show with Bobby Jackson before he became an assistant coach. It was just great to be with Bobby. Bobby is a class act. He is a wonderful human being. He is a true friend to people. Like, I hope, like, my dream coaching staff for next year would be that Doug gets the head coaching job and he brings Bobby back in to be one of the assistants. I would love to see that. I would just love to see that. I know he's in Philadelphia right now, but I would love to see him come back to Sacramento.
I honestly saw a world where Doug would potentially bring Mike Bibby in, since he was with the organization, broadcasting. But shouts out to Mike Bibby for getting the Sac State head coach job. That's
I think it's a great move, and obviously I work so closely with UC Davis, and I have to say also Jim Les is one of my all-time favorite Kings. I think of him so much just from UC Davis because I've worked with him forever, coaching the Aggies, and he is a great person, class act, wonderful human being. But I first met Jim Les. I was covering, when I was the sports director at UC Davis, the Kings had their training camp at Davis, and Jim Les was a member of the Kings at that time. So I interviewed him as a student. So so when he got the job as Kings head coach, I reminded him that we had met before, that I'd actually covered him as a King. So we hit it off right away. The thing that's so great about Jim Les is that he's as competitive as it gets. He's done a great job with UC Davis, but we always can talk Kings because he's a former King, and so that part's great. And now with Mike Bibby at Sac State, you've got two former Kings coaching in this area. And
unreal.
Sacramento State, they've struggled in basketball. There's no doubt about it. And it's a tough deal because they don't really have a facility. They're moving into a new one, and hopefully that'll be better. But I have to say, I think Mike Bibby is a great hire for them because if nothing else, it's generated automatic interest. College basketball is so much now about NIL, who you can get out of transfer portal, who wants to come play for a former NBA star. So I think it's a good move for Sacramento State. I'm really interested to see how quickly the Hornets can move up, and I think just from a rivalry standpoint with UC Davis, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, that's going to be great. And I think that move, because after, Brian Katz retired, there was not a lot of leeway with how there was one year where they made the Big Sky semifinals and were very competitive, only lost by 1 point.
Yeah.
But ever since then, they've been trying to find that coach for quite some time.
It's interesting because they've had good people there, like Brandon Laird after Brian Katz, really good coach. He's in Idaho now. David Patrick, good coach. He just happened to move on because he got an SEC associate head coach job, which was 3 or 4 times the money. You can't fault him for that. But yeah, you're right. They just have not been able to find that guy. So will Mike Bibby be a guy who can build this program and stay here for a few years?
Right. And I think that's very huge. Not only that, because Sac State's kind of in a spot right now where, they could be potentially moving on from conferences. I'm not, we've talked about it, before. This team, obviously, they were in conversations with Michael Vick as their football coach, too. So, Sac State is trying to make a lot of good moves right now.
They're trying to make a lot of noise, for sure. And the Michael Vick thing might be a little different. I don't know how serious, I'm not in the conversations there. I know, obviously, they did talk to him. That's what was reported. It's interesting for football because now they've applied to be an FBS independent, which on the surface sounds really tough because scheduling games and just everything that goes on with that. But I mean, if the big picture for them is to become a Pac-12 or Mountain West team and they already are in the FBS for a couple of years, it makes them probably it's more advantageous for a conference to pick them up knowing that they're already FBS, because if a school is FCS, they have to make a 2-year transition to begin with. And it's the same thing with UC Davis. I mean, obviously, I'm so tied in with the UC Davis football program, and it's an incredible program with Tim Plow and what we did last year, getting to the quarterfinals of the FCS National Championship.
It's huge.
It is huge. And so it'd just be really interesting to see how both schools move about it. And, Davis for every sport but football is moving into the Mountain West starting in 2026. And it's great to see this area grow, right, and become big time.
Yeah, and you talk about another thing that's also happening is the Sac Republic. They're going to get their own arena very shortly too. So, the A's are in town.
Yeah.
So not only is this is a really big time for Sacramento, has never been in this big of a spotlight ever in professional sports in quite some time. And so seeing how this all really stimulates from that is going to be a lot of eyes, from every sport around Sacramento, which is not, except for hockey, but hockey is its own. Soon.
Well, I will tell you, I covered a couple LA Kings games because they played here. They played at Arco Arena. The Sharks played up here, and they played LA Kings, and Gretzky was here.
Oh my gosh!
That.
Wow!
So I got a chance to cover Wayne Gretzky.
That's insane.
Yeah, way back when. But the interesting thing about that old Arco Arena, it wasn't really built for hockey, so you couldn't have all the sight lines in there. But it was still cool to have some exhibition, and they had a couple of regular season games there too. I want to say, I know a couple of exhibition games for sure.
Do you remember the Sacramento River Rats?
Yes, I actually called a couple of River Rats roller hockey games.
I have some crazy stuff to show you after this.
Yes.
Oh my god!
And, in terms of the great broadcasters too, Steve Buzzard, who
that's
did
our guy.
River Rats.
That's our guy.
Great guy. He's the guy who did UC Davis football for a long time before he decided to just move on. He had kids and he had a lot of weekend commitments, and that's how I became.
Toph is now calling baseball games too. So,
and that's how I ended up becoming the UC Davis football play-by-play guy. I was doing a lot of sideline reporting when Buzz was doing the games, and that's crazy. With a guy named Doug Kelly who called Davis games for 30 years and was my broadcast partner for a long time. But I mean, Buzz. We started when we first were just graduating from school. I give Steve Buzzard a lot of credit. He's a total entrepreneur. He started this thing called the Sacramento Sports Network. And it was myself, Jason Ross, Steve Buzzard, a guy named Steve Tebbs, Matt Ivey, God rest his soul, passed away way too young. And we would go out and cover high school games and do all sorts of different things. And I have some great memories, some great photos from that time.
That's incredible.
That is so crazy. Steve Buzzard.
And Steve worked on the Kings broadcast as well. So, and I would put up on that list too. He was only here a couple of years, but Brian Wheeler, who was one of my best friends who passed away back in November, was the voice of the Trailblazers for 21 years.
Oh, wow.
I was good friends with him because I produced his radio show for 1140, and I was his producer for Wheels After Work, and he hosted a lot of Kings post-game shows, and another guy who was great in the media business.
Yeah, Steve Buzzard did my 10th birthday party at Ashton Park. I'll never forget.
And then we would play in buzzer ball leagues together, and that's how we met, and
that's how we got our love for basketball.
Yeah,
so
and that's
Steve
how we started too.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about how Sacramento is starting to become this hub. We have the A's. We are about to have the Sac Republic Stadium being built, but before all of that, we had the Sacramento Mountain Lions.
Yes,
and is it true?
I their games for a couple of years as well.
Yes, I was going to say, is it true that you were covering the games for that year?
I was the voice for the Mountain Lions for a couple of years.
Dante Culpepper.
Culpepper was our quarterback. Denny Green was our head coach.
Yep.
And that was so much fun working with Denny Green. I'll never forget, we played on the road one year, and Jerry Glanville came over to visit because he was doing the TV that night, and I got to sit with Denny Green and Jerry Glanville just talking football for 2.5 hours, and that was beyond great. I worked with a guy named Isaiah Ross who played with the Bengals for several years, lives in this area. It was a great experience. And Denzel Washington's son, John
Washington,
was the running back who went on with the Rams. Got to know him, and Denzel came to a lot of the games and was on the sideline. And I never interviewed Denzel. I never was that fortunate, but he was there for a lot of the games. It was a fun time.
And then his son became an actor on Ballers and was a very, very well-known actor too. So but I mean, I remember going to Mountain Lions games when I was in 8th grade and just soaking all that information, seeing all that stuff, and just watching, seeing players like Dante Culpepper and Dennis Green being a coach. Those guys were it was so much fun, and especially being at Sac State too, which was a really, really great place to just host those type of games.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a lot of fun. I wish that league had been able to stay around a little longer.
Oh, that would have been fun. Who knows what could have happened with that?
You never know, man. It was good times.
Did you have any involvement with the Sacramento Surge?
No, that was a little before my time. But one of my dear friends who I worked with for UC Davis football a lot, Doug Kelly, was the public relations director for that. So Jack Youngblood, who used to work with our station, Grant Napier, who worked at the station, they did a lot of those games. So
wow,
yeah.
After, talking to you for an hour, I mean, just looking back at, Sacramento sport history, I mean, there's some incredible stories. So to tie it all together, if you could choose one memory from your memory bank that you wish you could relive over and over and over again, outside of the Robert Horry heartbreak and the Michael Jordan interview, what would you say?
Now, are we talking about Kings or just anything?
It could be. How about one from both? One from both.
Well,
one from both.
I'll give you two just kind of outside Kings, and I'll go back to Kings. I'm going to think about that one. I told you my 96, Seattle one is still my number one all-time memory. I'll try and think of a second one after that. But
at that point, is that when you were sitting courtside in 96?
I'm trying to remember if I was actually working that game or not. I actually walked up to the top of the building in the second deck just to listen to everything, and I was walking around just listening to it. The place was vibrating.
Yeah.
And the teams haven't even come out for warm-ups yet. That's what's so remarkable about it, the reaction. And then when the teams came out, it was the first playoff win in Kings history, back up in Seattle, who was number one, and that's when they had Sean Kemp and Gary Payton and Detlef Schrempf, and
Detlef Schrempf.
Yeah, George Karl was the coach, right? And they were the best. I mean, they went on to the NBA Finals that year. They took on Chicago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is still my favorite all-time Kings memory. But outside of it, probably the two most memorable experiences, I was at game one of the World Series last year when Freddie Freeman hit the home run. And being a Dodger fan,
I'm sorry.
I was sitting in the right field bleachers. So I was about 20 rows, give or take, about 5 rows left, 20 rows up from where that home run was hit.
That's wild.
So I've got the video. I didn't want to be that guy who was just filming everything. So I was just watching. I wanted to watch what was unfolding, right, with the bases loaded, and I wanted to be in the moment. But once he hit the home run, like I, of course, got my camera. I was just taking the whole thing around the stadium and everything.
That's incredible.
So I've got that. So that was cool. I've had so many great sports moments. That's one of the most recent ones. Going to the Masters with a group of friends a few years ago was super cool. Because thinking of that, the Masters is next week.
Yeah,
and it's a once in a lifetime type bucket list type opportunity, and to go with friends. And we had a golf trip beforehand, but it's incredible to be at Augusta National, but just that trip, like the Monday before was the national championship game, so we watched that. John Daly's there at a Hooters, and so we meet him and talk to him. We get the group photo with him. It's like the ultimate guys trip.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Hilarious.
That's incredible.
Like that will always be one of my favorite
John
sports
Daly
memories.
at Hooters.
That's your favorite place right there.
Yeah, I know. Going bankrupt now.
So those are a couple. I mean, there would be a ton of others that if I were really thinking about it, I would put on that list, but those are up there for sure.
I mean, with everything that you said, it was an honor to have you on.
It's
we
great
just
to
want to
be
say
here.
that first and foremost, it was an honor to have you on. Thank you for sharing all those incredible stories. Do you want to throw some quick trivia?
Let's do a little quick
We always like to.
Let's see what I can do here.
Yes.
All right. So here is our little trivia segment. So Scott Marsh, for those that don't know, has been working with the Kings for 29, 30 plus years. He's covered every single player from top to bottom, and so today we're gonna quiz Scott on every on years that a specific year.
I'm gonna feel like a total failure if I don't come through here.
But we're gonna just quiz. We'll start off a little simple. We'll start off simple.
Okay, let's do it.
So here's the rules of how this will go. Scott will have a full minute to name as many Kings players on the roster for that specific year.
Okay.
This includes players that were traded away or traded for. Okay. So this is through the entire season. So we're going to start off just a little bit simple. We're going to just start off with this year. So you'll have a timer on my clock, and when I start, you will go. 3, 2, 1, and go.
Okay. De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Domantas Sabonis, Keegan Murray, Keon Ellis, Isaac Jones, Mason Jones. Let's see here. Devin Carter. Valanciunas. Let's see here. Trey Lyles. There's another Jones there also. I am blanking on it at the moment. There's 3 Jones for a while. Isaiah Crawford, Jake LaRavia. I don't think I said Devin Carter yet.
You did say Devin Carter.
I did say Devin Carter. Okay. Let's see here. Time is ticking. Who else am I missing? I'm sure there's probably somebody pretty obvious on this list here. I gave you the starting 5 at least.
Mm-hmm.
Got 5 seconds.
Keon Ellis.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's
time.
All right, that's
Who did I
time.
miss?
So, players that were traded: Kevin Herter.
Oh, Herter. Yeah, of
Alex
course.
Len.
Of course. Yes. Yes.
You did mention the Jones. There was Mason Jones that was there.
McDermott.
Who was the third Jones?
McDermott. Colby Jones.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yep,
there we go.
Colby Jones.
There we go.
All
So
right.
do one from each era.
All right.
So we did the current, so now do
middle
range.
All right, so we're actually going to go from the beginning too.
Oh,
so
okay.
we're going to go from like his first year. So let me go ahead and pull up the roster right now.
Yep.
So Scott Marsh started working with the Sacramento Kings in 1995 in the 96 season.
Yep.
And if you want to get your clock out for this one, Cristo,
My phone's right there. I can't do
your
it.
phone's right there. Okay. I trust that this will be a clock. So
It'll show up
Yeah,
on
it'll
there.
show up right there. Okay, sweet. So you, my friend, have to name the entire roster in a minute
Yep.
from your first season covering the Kings.
Okay.
All right.
That's
you
going to
ready?
be tougher, obviously, but
All
I will
right.
give it my best shot.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, and go.
Okay. Mitch Richmond, Brian Grant, Michael Smith. Goodness, who else was the center that year? Man, I'm really trying. Who's the point guard on that team?
Number 5.
Number 5. Oh, man. I don't know. I mean, St. Jean was obviously the coach of that team. Eddie Jordan was the assistant coach. Who else was on that team? Smith, Grant, Richmond. Who was our center that year? Gosh, I don't know. I'm having a
Number 0.
0. Was it Olden Polonese?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, OP.
We're going to help you out.
Numbers helps there. OP was one of the great Kings, by the way.
We got
too.
number 30.
Sweet man,
Number 30,
also.
you would know.
30.
And number 42.
42. Was Walt Williams on
Walt
that
Williams,
team?
that is time,
The
yes.
Sox. Yeah, for sure.
So we had Tyrone Corbin, who became
Tyrone
a coach.
Corbin. And, his kid played at UC Davis as well, so I got
That's
to know him
crazy.
pretty
Dang.
well.
There was Titus Edney on there.
Edney, that's right.
This I actually had a question about this. So were you? I think it was right before you started, but the Bobby Hurley accident.
So I was around for that. I'm trying to remember the year. I think I was in college when that happened, but I do remember that night. I remember I got to know Mike Poplowski. Was Poplowski on that team as well? 95, 96? Was he still on the roster?
It doesn't say he is.
Okay. So it was after. I mean, the Hurley thing was before that.
Yes, yeah. It was like 93, 94. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I just remember that night. Mike Poplowski saved Bobby Hurley's life.
Yeah, I
Wow.
actually met someone that was doing a ride along with a police officer that night, and he was actually there for that moment. It was so
the scary
crazy.
thing is I used to take that way home a lot because I lived out in Roseville for a period of time, so I would always pass that Levee Dike where that accident happened. And I'm always thinking, boy, I got to be careful driving on this road.
That is crazy.
All right, Cristo, I'll let you choose.
Should we do one more?
I
Okay.
think I'll let you choose
Let's
this
wrap
one.
it up
I'll let you choose this one.
Okay, I'll do one of my favorite years.
Okay.
Just because I like some of the players on here.
Yep.
Let's do the 2015-2016.
Oh,
man.
that's my favorite year too.
I just like who we had on this team.
Oh, my God. Let's see here.
2015-2016.
Boy, that is right in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
Okay. You'll have to help me out here. Let's see here.
We got you.
Yeah.
No, but I'm guessing this is still the Isaiah Thomas, DeMarcus Cousins era.
This was a little bit after.
After it.
After,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
A little bit after Isaiah Thomas.
Okay. But DeMarcus was still on the team that year.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay. So we've got DeMarcus on that team. Was Quincy Doobie on that team?
No, Quincy Doobie was not on the
Trying
team.
to think of eras that we've got going on here. Okay. So Isaiah was out. Boy, who was our point guard that year then?
So we had number 9 at the point.
Number 9. Tyreek was on that team, right?
Tyreek was not on that team.
No.
Tyreek was not on the team at the time.
Okay. Then I'm really going to struggle with this one. Give me a couple other players so I can put this in perspective.
So we had Rudy Gay this year.
Rudy Gay,
and
wow.
And we had Willie Cauley-Stein.
Oh, my gosh.
Willie Cauley-Stein was a rookie that year.
Okay.
And then the guy at the point was Rajon Rondo.
We just brought in Rondo.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So this is the year.
Well, I got to ask you, why is one of your favorite teams?
I was a big Rondo fan. Rondo fan. So when we got Rondo, I was thrilled. I was like,
he's one of the smartest Kings players ever.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Smartest players in the league.
20 assist game. The 20 assist game against Charlotte. I mean, that whole team was just filled with guys that just...
But I got to tell you, I'm not remembering a lot from that team. I mean,
Seth
I don't know if I blocked it out.
There.
Seth was on that team.
Marco Bellinelli.
That's
when we had Caron Butler.
Caron Butler. He's a great guy, too. He's now with Miami. He did a lot of college broadcasting.
Yeah.
I actually I was able to work with him a couple of times, but... how many wins did that team get?
I think it was like 34 wins or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was just not
49.
terrible.
Yeah, that's pretty close, though, yeah.
They would have been in the play-in.
With George Karl as the head coach. I just always remember media.
Was he the coach for the full year that year?
Yeah.
So it was the year prior when they let go of Malone.
Yeah.
The year before, and Karl came in as head coach.
Correct.
So that's when Karl and DeMarcus were just absolutely getting after it with each other.
With a great, and then all the tweets.
Who were some of the other bench members on that team?
We had Ben McLemore.
McLemore, that's right.
We had Darren Collison. Oh, he was like the backup point guard.
Yep. Okay.
We had Quincy Acey.
Quincy Acey, not Quincy Doobie. Yeah, Quincy Acey out of Iowa,
and
right?
then we had my favorite King ever, Costa Koufis.
Wow.
We had Costa Koufis on that team. We had deep down there, Eric Moreland.
Oh, this one's a deep too. Sim Bilar was also on that team too.
Wow. Yeah, no, I think there's probably some years I blocked out a little bit.
That's hilarious.
Oh my God. I mean, just looking at this roster though, it's like, Omri Caspi when he was going toe to toe with Steph in the 3-point shootout.
Right.
That's right. That was a fun one. Then James Anderson, just guys that just
James Anderson. Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty deep list.
That is.
How many years away do you think Sacramento is from having an All-Star weekend here?
A long ways.
You think it will happen in? It's just a lack of hotel space, right?
I can't conceive of it happening.
Yeah.
And it's not because of the arena. It's exactly what you said. It's about the hotel space. And the NBA is very specific about having hotel space within a mile of the arena.
Yeah.
So
right.
it's not just about having enough hotel space. It's about having it directly next to the arena. So
would the hotel right by where the opposing team used to stay across from the Capitol, is that considered a mile away, or is that
the Hyatt?
The Hyatt,
yeah. But the Hyatt, and again, it's one of the marquee hotels. I don't know if it's up to NBA All-Star status at this point. It may or may not be. I don't know.
I think the only one is the Sawyer.
The Sawyer for sure, right? Then where else are you putting people?
Not the Best Western.
They built some other boutique type places, but not enough for NBA All-Stars. And what's interesting, Chase Center is out a little bit. It's not a mile. But there's so much stuff in San Francisco, of course. But yeah, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, unfortunately.
I know. I don't think so either. It would be amazing. With everything that is happening, though, we are trending in the right direction, and we also have the X Games coming this summer.
That's going to be cool.
That's going to be so
really cool.
We have to go to that, even though it's in the dead of summer, so it's going to be so hot, but
that's cool.
Got to go to that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Mr. Scott
it's
Marsh.
been great talking to you guys.
Thank you so much.
And happy early birthday once again.
I appreciate it. I'm going to go back and study all my rosters of Kings so I can be more competitive.
That way you're ready.
Next time we have you on, we'll be asking you some more fun questions.
That's fair enough. All right. Let's hope the Kings are in the play-in and hopefully the playoffs.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Believe.
Great show, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you again.
Thank you, Scott.